On Tuesday, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, once a star in the Democratic Party, resigned. The move came a week after an investigation found that he had sexually harassed multiple women and created a toxic work environment.
There are generational and cultural shifts that I just didn't fully appreciate. And I should have. No excuses.
Now, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul is set to become the first woman governor of New York. She said she plans to remove any staffers who acted unethically.
At the end of my term, whenever it ends, no one will ever describe my administration as a toxic work environment.
Now, Ronan, you've written extensively about high-profile men accused of sexual harassment and sexual abuse. What patterns of power and abuse emerge from Cuomo's alleged behavior, and what do these allegations say about who the governor is?
I think it's important to note, Yamiche, that what we saw happen with the sharp downfall of Andrew Cuomo is in many ways not a traditional Me Too story. For sure, there is a serious dimension that has to do with sexual harassment and abuse. The Attorney General's report on Andrew Cuomo included at least one allegation that would be classified as, Class C misdemeanor in New York. It could be theoretically punishable with a few months in jail, to groping. So that's serious. But I think that what we're seeing in the political landscape around Cuomo is equally a consequence of years and years of corruption, bullying, a willingness to subvert and manipulate processes around him. My most recent reporting on Andrew Cuomo was about that strain of his leadership, the fact that over the years he dismantled corruption commissions that were looking into him. He bullied and intimidated officials who sought to scrutinize his actions. One of the incidents we document around the closure of an anti-corruption commission in 2014 was a call he made to the White House, seemingly, if not trying to get the top federal prosecutor in Manhattan fired, certainly trying to undercut him and interfere with an ongoing investigation. And we saw around the release of the sexual harassment report from the Attorney General's office, similar tactics. Some of the very same players that he has undermined in the past being undermined and smeared again. One of the authors of that report being the subject of leaks from his team that sought to imply that author, June Kim, was, shall we say, less than impartial, that his motive was personal or political. These are tactics that Andrew Cuomo relied on again and again and again. And I do think part of how this connects to the Me Too movement, a swath of reporting by a whole bunch of journalists, a swath of work by a whole bunch of activists over the last few years, is that there is less tolerance of that particular leadership style. Has it gone away? No. But I think we see in the Andrew Cuomo case a diminished willingness to put up with that as a hallmark of leadership.
Mm-hmm. And Jonathan, news broke today that the New York State Assembly is suspending its impeachment investigation into the governor. That's, of course, interesting timing. I was always wondering, why is he staying on for 14 days?
Right.
What do you make of the timing of that?
Well, if Cuomo wants to run again, the fact that they're not going to impeach him is actually helpful, because if he was to be impeached, it would obviously impede his ability to run for office in the future. Look, I think it's a long shot that he could rehab himself and run for office down the road, but he has a history of trying to come back and run again. In 2002, he dropped out of a race for governor, came back, become state AG, and ran again for governor, of course. So it's not totally crazy, and by not impeaching him, he would still technically have that opening to try to come back down the road.
An opening to try to come back. Eva, you were a reporter in New York State in the Hudson Valley. I'm struck by the idea that Republicans, especially when you think of former President Trump, they're able to hold on, but and not in a lot of ways face the political consequences. But on the Democratic side, you can name only a couple, but there are men like Al Franken who really had to pay the political price. Is there a double standard here when it comes to the politics of this?
Well, Democrats and Republicans on this issue in particular have come out and expressed different positions on this, different values. You know, Democrats often say we are the party of women, we trust and believe women. So when it is one of their own that is accused of sexual misconduct, it becomes very complicated. You can't pick and choose who you want to protect. And so that is why we see the response that we did. I also think what was really powerful about this moment is that I think collectively we are asking ourselves, is this a moment that we're seeing a shift in our politics? Because some of the hallmarks of Governor Cuomo, right, this gravitas, this bullying, the family legacy, it seems as though we are moving away from prizing that as the most significant aspects of our modern day politicians. And to the people in the Hudson Valley, in Sullivan County, in the Catskills, I think the heavily Republican law enforcement community there thrilled by this outcome. Maybe not necessarily for the allegations against him, but for other issues that he has long championed, like gun control. And often they feel as though they don't have a voice in New York State because the large voting population always reelects Democrats. And so no one happier than them, I think, with this outcome.
His persona really is a throwback, though, and it's striking that he got away with it for as long as he did. Obviously, on most policies, he was progressive, certainly culturally, and where the state was. But his persona, though, in the year 2021, for Democrats in a progressive state, hard to take.
Ronan, you're nodding here. I want to give you the last word in some ways here. People who had never spoken out are now speaking out, including to you. Where do you see this going next? And could you face, and could Governor Cuomo face criminal prosecution? You can also, of course, jump in on Jamar and Eva's great points there.
Well, I think both of them are correct. Jonathan makes a really good point about this being a leadership style that is out of vogue right now. And I think that's something to be thankful for. We've seen in industry after industry that kind of rough-hewn bullying style sort of lose its purchase. And in Andrew Cuomo, we see someone who presided over an administration, I think it could be fairly argued, that was fairly corrupt. The kind of interference that I mentioned before was widespread. We saw, before his tenure as well, it's true, this is not a problem that originated with him, but certainly also during his tenure, New York remained one of the more corrupt states in the country. There's a lot of ways to slice the data, but on a lot of lists, that is true. Albany has a special interest politics and a special interest money problem. It has tolerated this kind of interference and bullying across party lines, but certainly within the Democratic Party. And I think we're seeing a wake-up call where those changing standards that Jonathan alluded to are colliding with an old school style of leadership that now is being shown the door.
Well, I have to tell you, Eva, I'm gonna all of the great points that you made, but really, you started out this strain of the changing times and the shifting ideas, and the idea that the personalities we saw, maybe it will work on the GOP side, but this kind of gravitas and really running on your family's name, that's a changing idea in American politics.